Get started, and the other two guests, when they pop in, we'll just add them up. Okay, so today we are here for National Minority Health Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to start with the guests, the panelists, introducing themselves and just telling us a little bit about their background. Just so you know, we have a total of 4 panelists. 2 are life coaches and 2 are therapists, and the 2 that are here currently are the life coaches. So we'll start with mindset coach and speaker.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jeff Reed. I am a speaker and a mindset coach. I've been talking about mental health, emotional health, and how to handle hard situations for the last few years now. And my background simply is I grew up in a house that was really dysfunctional, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, and the trajectory of my life was not a good one. But as I started to learn a lot about myself in my process in counseling and therapy, and so using my talents to communicate, to share with people what I've learned, my story, and the 4 steps I have of handling hard situations that have changed my life. And so to be here to talk about mental health and what it means for us as minorities, I'm blessed by it. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Coach Reese.
I love it, love it, love it. Reese McNeil. Wow. Let's see how I do this in 30 seconds. So I've been serving people since 1998 when I found myself in the ministry working with teenagers at the time. I was this far from being a teenager, but I found myself working with teenagers, and I served in the ministry for about 20 years. And I've been working for myself as a coach, speaker, author, all the things. I like to call myself a civil engineer. I'm a bridge builder. And I've been doing that for about the last 8 years. And I'm here dialed in and just ready to serve. Super honored to be even considered to be a part of this conversation, especially as one of the panelists. So I'm here to serve, and I'm also here to receive and be served as well. So let's do it.
And we have Keith, the therapist, who just popped in. That's Stark Solutions. He's also one of the panelists from our last one. So we'll let Keith introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his background.
What up, good people? Thank you so much. I apologize. I had to create before I start, I had to create a backup page because somehow my first page, it won't allow me to join a live, but I can go live. So I don't know what that issue is with TikTok. So I had to create a backup page to do it, and I just reached enough so I can go live, right? But I can't turn my camera. So with that being said, how are you, young lady? Thank you for, again, inviting me up. My brother Mindset and Coach Reese. It's a pleasure being in this space with you. And also, Mika will be in a few minutes when she wraps up a couple of things that she's working on.
Okay, great. All right, awesome.
So, again, my name is Keith Stark, originally from New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia, a little city called Camden, New Jersey. I've been working with youth. Very similar to Coach Reese. I've been working with youth for my whole working career. My first job is something I pride myself on, was with Eastside High School in Jersey. The basis for the movie Lean on Me was my first opportunity. Now, I only worked for them for 6 weeks. However, I worked for them. So I was that started it off for me. So I went from there to being a lifeguard to teaching behavior. I was teaching gym for a behavioral health school, and I then wound up working for that behavioral health school. From that, I went into juvenile justice, where I spent most of my career focusing in juvenile justice, which was the reason why I became a therapist. And so I went from there I moved to Las Vegas, where I currently live, and did some leadership nonprofit work, and then got into education, where I taught African American Studies and Business for some years, and then saw the need for the mental health growth. So I jumped over. I got my license in marriage and family therapy, and so for the past 8 years, I've been operating as a therapist. Now in private practice, where I see just about everyone. I really focus on Black and brown people, specifically men, relationships, and young people. And I also work full time in the school district here in Las Vegas, Clark County School District, as a therapist, one of the first or the first Black male therapists in our school district, and the second therapist hired in our school district. So I came in in the beginning of that transition, and I'm still currently here fighting for us. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel. I had to find a way to make sure I was there.
I appreciate it because I know it's kind of different things can happen on TikTok with related to accounts, and it can be stressful, especially if you have an event coming up. Because I know I'm on my best behavior when I have an event coming up. Don't put up any videos that may be slightly offensive to anyone or anything like that. So I know exactly what you mean. Well, I don't know what your situation is, but I know it's stressful when you can't get it, when you can't use your account the way you want to.
Yeah.
So you were on the panel last month, Keith. Also, can you quote the statistic you did about Black male therapists last month, so people can be aware of this?
Yeah, for sure. So in our country, 4% of all therapists are Black. 4%. That's Black men and Black women, Black female therapists. Out of all the therapists in the country, only 1% are Black male. And so with it only being 1%, even if, we hear this all the time that Black men don't go to therapy. Even if, let's say that is the case, we are still overworked by those who do. Right? And those who are looking for Black male therapists. And so the need is so high, the need is so great. So I encourage anyone who works in the field or who is looking to help to go and get that licensure, right? If you choose not to get that licensure, go the coaching route and really do your study and focus on some of the issues of mental health, or some of the issues that plague our community, and take that route. But together, we need each other. We need each other to grow. We need each other for our communities and to make impact. 1% is very, very difficult for the 1% to make an impact on 100%. But if we can get that 1% up to 10%, then we make huge impact. And so I don't know if I'll be able to see that in my lifetime, but I know that I'm gonna do everything in my power to hit that number, and to make just not necessarily the number of clinicians, but to make the number of people we impact greater.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with actual questions. What is minority mental health, and why is the focus needed? And we'll start with Coach Reese.
Ooh,
Tough question off the bat.
Exactly. So I honestly, my gut is telling me to defer to Keith, to let him lay the foundation here for this one. I believe he's much more qualified to lay the foundation for this one.
Okay, Keith.
I don't know. I like what you did there, Coach. I know basketball is your thing, and
he passed it.
Most ballers from the Northeast don't pass the ball, so I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you did that, but I like it. I know you're a baller from Philly, man. I know, y'all don't usually pass the ball. Y'all go straight to the hoop, right? But I'll take it. I think it is, it's a unique, challenge that that racial and racial, I'll say ethnic people deal with specifically when it comes to mental illness. It is on the basis of let's just talk Black mental health, right? It's quite different than any other culture.
Mm.
When you talk about Black mental health, we're looking at the impacts of slavery. We're looking at the impacts of the civil rights era. We're looking at the impacts of oppression in our communities and how that plays a major role in how life was given to us. We're looking at the life of what people call the ghettos, the projects, right? All of that came with some silent attacks that created trauma on us as a people and as a culture. And no matter how we deal with it, no matter how we look at it, we can run from it. We can be the type of person that say, you know what, I'm all for the culture. I'm connected to my hood. We have to realize that that's a trauma response. We can also be the type of person that say, you know what, I run from that. I no longer want a piece of that. So I'm gonna go and live my life completely different because that traumatized me. That's still a trauma response to that. And so our trauma is so unique and so different that the impact that it makes on our lives is different than any other culture. And so when you talk about other minority groups, when we talk about brown people, the Hispanic culture, and Mexicans specifically, and what they had to do to overcome their country to get to this country here, working on the West Coast. Now, when you hear stories of how families, and I'm not talking like I'm talking students that I had to come across on the backs of their parents to get here. So it's very, very now. It's not generational. It's current in their lives. So what their parents experienced, their grandparents experienced, and what they experienced in coming here is completely different. And now that we're here, we both struggle and deal with the effects of racism. I hope I gave an understanding to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to add anything to that?
No,
And
that's why I swung the ball, because I knew that was going in.
Yeah, I thought it was beautiful.
Okay. All
Well
right.
said,
the
brother.
shot, Reese. I took the shot.
What are some of the barriers? I think I'll start with mindset on this one. What are some of the barriers that minority people face when accessing mental health services?
Yeah, in my experience, what I've seen is just exposure to counseling and believing that counseling is something, and the stigma behind it. I think just so many people of color, Black people that in my experience, just kind of like, oh, that's white people. What you talking about? We ain't got no problems like that, and it's not true. And I think one is just the exposure to this is a good thing for us. And I mean, a lot of times, my background coming from the church is just like you just need the word, and I'm not against the word whatsoever. But understanding that there's more here, you know what I mean? Therefore, there's more to surrender to God, right? I think that exposure, and I think and the stigmas behind it, because even sometimes once we're exposed, is that stigma behind it. You can't talk about that stuff. Ain't nothing wrong with you. You fine. I think those are for me, in my experience, those are the two things that kind of are the biggest barriers for us as people of color.
And what barriers have you seen, Coach Reese?
Of course, my time in the ministry, same thing. I saw a lot of everything was take it to the altar, and that should be enough. And if you couldn't get your breakthrough that way, then there was something inherently wrong with you. And it was like we doubled down on the pain that the person was going through, because I come here for help and you point me in this direction and I'm still feeling how I'm feeling, and now you make me feel worse. And I've seen people pushed away because or being told that there was something again inherently wrong with them that they needed to go fix and then come back. And that always threw me, because I'm like, well, no, we're supposed to be the ones helping. And so, and then what do you do with that? Because a lot of us, even to your point, we don't know, go find a therapist. This is new language for us, but we do know, go down to the church. We do know that one person in the neighborhood who we know has a relationship with God, we know we run to them. But then when we run to them and we don't get what we need, then it's like, I'll just figure this out. I'll go back into my bubble, or I'll drink, I'll smoke, I'll womanize, we know that long, terrible list that we go through. So that was a big one that I saw that really, really, really hurt me a lot through those years in the ministry.
Is there anything that you would like to add to that, Keith?
I think Mika sent a request. I don't know if she's still in
Oh
there.
no, I didn't see. I'm doing like 10 million things at once. It's
Okay.
hard. I feel like I suffer from ADD sometimes. I'm not trying to be funny, but as in the last few years of my life, I feel like I have either ADD or I'm just all over the place. So let me see if I see her on here.
I have. I
Okay,
saw-
cool. I see her.
Yep. So yes, I believe that when you talk about what's missing, right? When you talk about
Welcome in, Mika. By the way, welcome in.
the barriers to minority mental health access, right? Access, having access to mental health services are not easily given. Let me not say, I'm gonna say adequate, and services that are kind of free. I don't believe that there's a lot of access, right? There's not a lot of representation, in which I talked about a little earlier. On top of what the gentleman up talked about, I think it's a safer space and an easier space to deal with the coping mechanisms that our community deal with than it is to go outside and go to therapy or to do some other things. I had a young man when I worked in the alternative schools in New Jersey, in Camden, right? I had a young man who we were taking young men who were on probation and parole, with permission from their probation officers, of course. We were taking them from the inner city to go on trips outside of the inner city. We went to pick up this one young man, and when we picked him up, he was outside, but because he was on the block with all of his boys, he hid from us, and we saw him hiding from us because he was afraid. This is what he said to us afterwards. I was afraid of what they might say if I got on that van, right? And so when they got on that van, if he was to get on that van, that van was a white van and it looked like the police. That's one.
Oh wow.
So the fear that comes along with that. But two, he didn't want to be considered soft or weak because he would have had to pay the price for that when he returned. And so I think that goes along with what my brothers up top was saying. And so those are some of the barriers as well,
Welcome in, Mika.
Hello, I'm sorry I'm late.
You're fine. You're fine. We have lives outside of TikTok, so only thing we can do is set a time and hope we'll be there when it's time to be there. If not, we get there when we can, right?
I know.
So the question we were addressing is, what are some of the barriers for minorities to accessing mental health services?
I would think, for me, I would not say think. What I know and hear people say, one, the distance, the lack of resources that are in the area. A lot of time resources are not available, and a lot of people suffer with transportation. A lot of people suffer with not having the ability to have someone take them to and from those appointments. So a lot of times they're not even accessible. So accessibility is one. Two, making it fit the culture. A lot of times we have to base things off of culture. Everybody therapy is going to look different. Everybody needs are going to look different. How we reach people are going to look different. So we can't put, like I said before, about putting everybody in a box. We have to think outside the box. We have to think about the culture of the person, their background, their traumas, and how do we make that resource fit their lives so that they are able to receive it. Sometimes people come in for resources or services, and they veer away from it because they're looking at what the qualifications are to get it or to receive it, or who if it's financial, or maybe it is the kind of services. Like if you want me to just come and sit on your sofa, I may not want to sit on your sofa. I may want to go outside and sit outside in the sun, like Keith was talking about the young guy. I don't want to look like I'm receiving those services, but I want the services. So I just think the accessibility and making it fit the culture.
Okay.
Well said.
Oh yeah. Also, tell us a little. I don't think I asked you this part. Tell us a little bit about your background. That's the thing that we did initially when they came in.
Okay, well, I am a social worker. I am a clinical social worker here in Colorado. I am a therapist now. I'm also just got promoted to being director of case management for my job. So I have a background with domestic violence, working with youth. I work with the Department of Family and Children's Service. I have worked in a prison for men who were at Georgia, one of our HIMAX prison. So I did level 2 mental health therapy there. I also have worked in the school systems as far as like partnering with the Board of Education. I had a business that I had, so I sat with my business inside the school system. I have did everything. I have worked medical, social work, you name it, I did it. I probably don't seen it all, done it all. So that's a little bit about my background. But right now I am in the medical health care, and I'm also a mental health therapist, and that's another thing I'm sitting here doing, trying to schedule these appointments.
Okay. Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Okay. So mindset coach, if you have I know you're a coach, but if you have a client or potential client, someone that you know that has need for mental health services, what is your approach to tackling these mental health issues for them, or help assisting them?
So you like someone who's come to me and said, I got something going on,
Well,
or
yeah, let's say they don't even say that. They just start talking to you, and you realize that they might not even say that, because a lot of times people they're not going to come out and ask for it. They're just going to tell you what's going on, and you hear them, and you recognize that there's a need that has to be met. So how do you go about tackling these issues?
that's a great question. So like, one thing I'd love to do, like one thing I feel like we do bad, not even as minorities, just people. Like I think a lot of times when people come to us, we feel like we have to fix them. You know what I mean? Like I gotta fix the situation, or they coming to me because they need some help in fixing this or figuring this out. And I don't know how to figure this out, right? I think a lot of times, first and foremost, we just need to listen, and I think also in asking questions. And the more we ask questions, the more answers we get, right? And the more understanding that we have. I think one thing I've been able to do, because I think if you go in there and go, hey, look, I hear you, you need some help. You know what I mean? That may not go well, right? That's you're going to tarnish your relationship with that person, so on and so forth. But I think one thing I've been able to do, I will then share my story, share some of my pain, some of the things I've been through, talk about how I've started going to counseling and how it's helped me. You know what I mean? And so therefore, they're not in this alone, and they don't think I'm judging them, or they don't think I'm better than them, right? And I was like, have you ever thought about going to counseling and therapy? Like, you ever thought that it might help? Like, basically, in my life, this is what it's done for me, and like, what do you think about that? Making it their decision versus like telling them, I know what's best. I think you need to do this.
Right. Okay, Keith.
So I typically sign them up for a session. If it's the same question, right? I see them, but if not to change how it goes, but if I understand that someone comes to me and their needs don't fit my skill set, or my skill set don't fit their needs, then I refer out. I look to other therapists that I may know. I look to other therapists in the valley where that would be more suitable for them. But it's really important to know that everybody that comes across your calendar is not your client, right? And so it's okay. It's okay that they're not, right? And sometimes people feel that they, because they booked a session with you, regardless, or they had that initial session with you, that they have to be committed to that process. And if, I tell clients all the time, if I'm not your guy, and if the process doesn't, if our process together don't work, it's part of my responsibility to make sure I find you someone that does. And it doesn't attack me or hurt me in any way, shape, or form, because I'm part of the 1%, right? Like there's a lot more people out there that need, and I want to make sure that the goal is that your mental health is better, not that my calendar is filled. So,
Okay. Coach Reese?
I would say the initial thing is always to receive them in love and give them the space to communicate whatever it is they're attempting to communicate. Also to be warm and kind and compassionate and empathetic, and provide a safe space for them. And also, I would say that would lead into transparency and sharing, if there are any connection points in what they're experiencing and things that I may have experienced, and let them know, again, some of the things that have helped me, and point them in the direction of help. If I'm your person, I'm like what Keith said. If I'm your person, great, let's do it. If not, awesome. Let me, take my hand and let me get you to the person, the person that can help you. But initially, I want to give them a soft place to land. So I want to make sure that I receive them in love. That's always, always, always where I start.
Okay. Would you like to add anything to that, Mika?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with everything they said about, making sure that this client fits what you are able to do, listening, being an effective listener, all those things. But I also say know your biases, because sometimes like people fill their calendar with people just because like they want clients on their, calendar to, provide services, to collect money. Therapy is not about collecting money. It's about providing a service. And if you have biases and you know that this is something that you struggle with and that you see that, leave it alone. And if it's not your specialty, you can do more damage to a person by not referring them out, or by not recognizing your own biases, and by not recognizing when you're being traumatized by a situation. So also recognizing those things. But I agree with everything that everybody said. That was pretty much what I would say. So yeah.
Okay, so what if someone is interested in therapy, but they don't have insurance or don't have the financial wherewithal to pay for it? What are some of the things that are available to them?
Are we going? You asking me that's for me to start?
Yes, you know what? Since you're already on, you can go ahead and start first since you're already on.
Okay, so one, looking at resources, there are a lot of agencies out there that will provide therapy, but there are a lot of agencies that are not therapists. So making sure that you connect to the right agency. But if it's just an agency that is for resources, making sure, like for me, before I refer someone to anything, whether it's paying out of pocket or just, within the community, I'm looking at the effectiveness of that organization. What is it? Have they shown that they are providing effective services to the individual? The last thing I want to do is refer someone over to an agency and it's not being effective. But there are websites you can look on, like 211, looking up in United Way to see if there's some areas out there, making partnership with people and saying, hey, what kind of services do you provide? A lot of hospitals don't know this, but a lot of hospitals have resources inside of the hospitals as well. So there are resources out there. The issue, again, like I said, is accessibility. A lot of them are not within that area. So if you're going to send out and make referrals for resources, also look into how that patient is going, or their client is going to get to those resources. And maybe you not only need to look up like the therapy or the coaching or, whatever resource it is, but you also may need to look up transportation. Are there transportation resources? So if you're going to put this piece together, don't say, hey, I gave you this resource to go to therapy, or I gave you this resource to go to coaching. You know, this person can't drive, or this person suffers from mental health. You may have to put the full pieces of the puzzle together. Now, that's just from a social worker expensive advice. But if, you know, most social workers, that's what we do. We know we are social, so we put the pieces together.
Okay. All right, Coach Reese.
What do you say? Mika checked all the boxes, I believe. I think I would go back to the same thing. If I'm having an interaction with someone and it's like, wow, I would love to work with you, but the issue is finances. Well, at that point, I'm still willing to love on them a little bit. I'm still willing to
Right.
engage in a conversation, offer them some things, and then also I will point them to people, places, and things, and give them some things to consider. Like, okay, of course, if it's something, we're talking about a serious issue, but I'm just talking about someone who's ready to make some changes. But I would, again, offer some insight, give them some things to consider, and then I would point them in the direction of some people, places, and things that I'm aware of. And that's going to be things that can be accessed via this thing. So, just to kind of help them to find some relief until they're able to really find the person to take them through the full process.
Okay. I won't go to either of you two unless you say that you have something that you wanted to add to what's already been said for that topic.
Of course, I always have something to say. I did
Oh,
have
okay.
something,
Okay.
which I think is every time we talk, we think it's important. It might not be, but I'm gonna try. Right.
Okay.
So I think I go through a process when it comes to dealing with people who communicate they don't have the resources to pay for it. And the reason why I do is because some of the people who say they don't have a resource to pay for it, they have it. They just choose. They don't see the value
Yep.
in it, right? At first it starts off as a sales pitch, right? And so, finding out, where they prioritize their mental health and therapy, right? Down to then going into when I realize that it's more of a financial issue, I then go down and assess what their pay scale. So I may a sliding scale fee. So I may go from that to what can you afford, and then from that to possibly, depending on the situation, that like Coach Reese was saying, I'll then go to do I have room for pro bono work, right? Do I have room to take a client on pro bono for a specific amount of sessions? And then another one that I forgot about, like the place in which I hold my private practice, they do scholarships. And so I'll have them fill out a scholarship where the scholarship will pay for either a portion or it will pay for their whole sessions up to a certain amount of sessions. So I will do that, or link them with a Medicaid provider, right? Where their Medicaid providers do offer free insurance for people who don't have the income. So sending them there, and because I don't take insurances, then I will also link them with a therapist to do the same.
Okay. Mindset, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Man, they all hit out the park. I think, for me, as I'm growing in what I'm doing, is just that networking and growing my my influence, where that's coming from, so I can lend people out. I think about so many workplaces, they do have employee assistance programs.
Right.
You got the first 2 sessions, and then maybe we'll bring you out. I worked for the post office. They had one where you could go for free. If anyone who lived in your house could go for free for like 2 or 3 sessions, so on and so forth. So there's so many ways to do it. I would also say, depending on the situation, every situation is different. But maybe finding some groups to go to. Sometimes a recovery group or a peer group, or I think a lot of times when people they can feel that that hope for freedom just by hearing somebody else going through something similar too. So I completely agree with everything that was said here.
Okay. And so far, I want to thank everybody that's participating in the chat as well as in the panelists, and also thank everyone that's gifted, because I'm up and down on the chat, so I don't always see something when it pops in there, and I don't want you guys to think that we're not thankful for the gifts you're setting up. So thank you for all that. Okay, so the next question I'm going to do is I'm going to toss the ball up, and whoever wants to grab it first, since we're talking about basketball. We've been talking basketball analogies. I'll just toss up the question, and whoever wants to jump in first can do so. Okay, so one topic that never goes away. There's a couple of them, but in terms of mental health, one that never goes away is grief. So, how do cultural backgrounds influence the grieving process, and what are some culturally sensitive ways to support people who are dealing with grief?
Well, I will speak of grief, and I'm gonna speak of grief for a number of reasons. Personally, I have experienced it with my sister and my dad passing. My sister passed. My niece was 3 years old, and I have custody of her. My sister was 39 years old. So grief is something personally I know, but professionally, and what I tell myself too is that grief is a process. We all grieve differently. So there's not a right or wrong answer to grief, and grief counseling, I think, is just a process. It is learning to cope. It is learning, and don't tell people, the worst thing I hate when people tell people who are grieving, oh, it'll get better with time. No, it will not. You learn to cope in time. It does not get better in time. That's just like saying, well, I know you're hurting because your loved one is gone, but one day they're gonna come back, or one day you're gonna see them in heaven. You know what I'm saying? Like that is what it feels like, and that's not true. So I think people just have to give people the safe place to just grieve and understand that everybody grieves different. It's not a cultural thing. It's more of a personal thing that I would think grief is, because no matter what your culture background is, somebody in the same culture can grieve totally different than how that mom, sister, dad, cousin, aunt, friends are grieving. So I think it's a process, and people got to realize, what is it that I need to help me move forward? What is it that I need to help me cope? And then you start putting the pieces together like that. You start talking about asking them, being honest. I think sometimes people are afraid to ask. We have that thing saying the big ask. You have to ask. What is it that you need? How are you feeling? And don't tell people you understand. That's another thing. When I don't care if my sister passed away and I get a client, they say they sister passed. I don't understand what they're feeling. I may have empathy, but I can't understand because the relationships are different. The situations are different. So I can say, you know what? I empathize for you. You can say anything else, but don't say that you understand. I don't like when people say, oh, I understand totally what you're feeling. No, you don't. You don't. So I think just allowing the person to process, giving them time to heal, working on themselves, because it is a process. It may take a year. It may take 10 years. But grief is just a personal thing. It's not a cultural thing.
And that's one thing, Mika. I'm glad you noted that we can't say we understand how. That's one thing I never say when somebody dies, because the closest people to me to die have been my grandparents, and then I had a couple of first cousins. But that is nothing like the relationship that person might have had with their family member or whoever it was that they lost. So you can't say that you know how. You definitely can't. I make sure I never say I know how you feel, because I know I don't know. Eventually I may know. It may be something similar, but like you said, it's different for each person.
And also, I want to say, grief is not just about in death. Grief is in a relationship. If I broke up, I ain't gonna speak that over there. But thanks. But grief can be in a relationship that someone breaks up. It could be my dog ran away and I don't know where my dog went. Grief can be that, I lost my job. Grief is anything that has caused a loss. It is not meaning just in death. Y'all don't laugh at him. He's silly. But that is grief, So I do want people to understand. People say I'm grieving and they say I lost my job and I'm grieving right now. They may well be grieving because it was a job and it was a loss. If I lose my house, I may grieve the fact that was my house. If I lost my freaking favorite shoe, let me grieve my shoe. It was a shoe that I like, you know. So grief is grief.
Great point. Great point. I'm gonna jump in there as well, unless somebody else was. I think, when you ask the question, you ask about, I do agree, grief is personal, but the loss, when it comes to losing, I think culturally losses are just a little different, right? In the inner city, loss is may happen more frequent, right? And as a whole, in general, and so the ability to grieve, it may be quite different in those arenas or in our culture. And so when you lose a loved one due to, for example, street violence, there may be one a month that you may deal with, where other cultures may not deal with that type of loss, but once or twice in their whole lives. And so, it's important to know that that those things that are culturally sensitive to specific cultures, there's a way that you deal with grief that's quite different. A lot of times, I do agree with the most beautiful woman in the world, Nika. Right? I do agree with her. Right? Grief is completely different for every individual, and how we deal with it is very specific to the individual. And there's nothing in the process of grief that would make someone feel better about that experience because their loved one is not coming back, or the thing that they've lost is not coming back, chances are. So it's important to not necessarily look to talk, but it's important to listen. It's important to allow them to get it out. It's important to allow them to have emotions about it and create that safe space for it.
Mindset.
Yeah, I would just say, like, let it out. I think, of course, we gotta do it in the most healthiest way possible. But I think allowing, like, man, what I heard is so beautiful. Like, allowing someone to just really feel what they feel. A loss is a loss. I was actually just talking with a friend, and he's got a wife and 2 kids, and he's happy. He's like, my life isn't what I thought it would be. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm happy with what I have, but it's just like, I'm not where I thought I would be. And I think sometimes we just have to grieve the fact of that idea of what we thought we wanted or could have, and just really acknowledge that. And I think being sad, crying, is such a negative stigma behind crying, and but really allowing people to do that and encouraging people to do so. We have to let that out. The emotion has to go somewhere. And I think when we don't, that's when it comes out. That's when the bridge snaps, and we saying or doing something that we got no business doing. Yeah, truly just feeling that. And I think it's no real timetable. Everybody's gonna be different on it. And I think just allowing people to have that time and just go through that, run your race. I tell people that, run your race. Let that out the right way. And man, let the tears flow. In my personal opinion, let the tears flow and speak about it. Really speak about it. How you genuinely feel.
Would you like to add anything, Coach Reese?
Yeah, I suppose it's appropriate that I'm coming in at the end here, because my role in the grief process is, of course, obviously I'm in agreement with everything that was spoken. My role is what do you want? Where do you want to go? Do you want to move forward? Are you ready to learn some ways to navigate through these emotions? Are you ready to learn how to change your relationship with what you're feeling right now, with these negative emotions? And are you ready to transform the meaning behind these triggers? Because right now, certain things are sending you a certain place. Well, are you ready to rewire, to reprogram those triggers to have them send you to a positive place? And if you're ready to do that, I'm the bridge builder. That's my area of expertise. I acknowledge everything that's going on, and I can love on you and cry with you. I'm willing to get down there in the mud with you. But when you're ready to break on out of that and start climbing, that's my area of expertise. So it was appropriate that I was on the tail end there, because that's how I look at everything. I look at it like, okay, there's that, when you get to that place of acceptance, then there's that now what moment. And sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to get to that now what moment, or we don't have people who guide us to that moment. And when you have that moment and it's like, okay, I'm ready to, I no longer want this to keep me small. I no longer want this to be a hindrance in my life. I no longer want this. I want to celebrate, these experiences, this person, or whatever it might be. I want to celebrate, the fact that I had those awesome shoes, like Mika said, for such a long time. And now, I'm ready to move forward, and I'm the move forward, let's climb, I got you person. So, but of course I respect the entire process. But what happens is, I'm the person, I'm the now what, let's get to it. Let's build this bridge, let's climb up person. I got you there.
Okay, so the next question is also a toss-up question. How can parents and caregivers recognize signs of trauma in children, especially when it might manifest differently across age groups and cultural backgrounds? It's toss-up, you don't have to go first.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
No, I was just making fun of Coach Reese because he said, "Woo!"
I love it. I love the
Reese,
question.
you want to go first?
No. First of all, we want to see Keith and Mika, but that's a different conversation.
Oh,
we want to
okay.
hear from we want Mika and Keith to lead the way on this one.
We can't see Keith. Did you remember his story, right?
Yeah, I don't have access.
He's on his backup account.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Yeah,
My
otherwise
apologies.
he would be full front, I'm sure.
So, hey, babe, wipe your screen. It's a little blurry. I can't have her looking all,
That's what I'm talking about, Keith. Yeah.
I love that. Hey, Reese, I love that woman, Reese. No, go ahead, baby. You can go.
Can you read the question again, please? Because I know we got a little distracted.
Right. How can parents and caregivers recognize signs of trauma in children, especially when it may manifest differently across age groups and cultural backgrounds?
So this is tricky. Kids are learning how to express themselves, and I would say it is based off of age. But I would say the biggest thing that most parents can look for is behavior changes. Most parents know your children. If you see your children are acting out, I tell parents all the time, behaviors just don't happen. They don't wake up one day and be like, you know what? I'm just going to act out today. Behaviors come from something. There's a root cause to a behavior. So if a parent really know, or a caregiver or a guardian really know their child or their person, when you start seeing those behavior changes, start asking questions, keep paying attention, document things, just keep a close eye. A lot of times people think when kids are talking that they're fine. And if they're not talking, then they're not okay. And it could be vice versa for some children. So you can't just assume because a child is talking and going about their day that they don't have any problems. I will tell you, I told you I have my niece who is 3. My sister passed away. I ask her all the time, are you okay? Are you happy? And I tell her another thing, I make it safe for her to come to me as a child. And whatever she is expressing to me, now don't get it wrong. Like sometimes she a girl, so she emotional. But, and I say that with all respect, because me, I'm emotional too. But I let her, I have a safe place for her. And we did write a children's book about this. We do have a children's book out there. And one thing that we talk about is the safe place. We talk about her safe place. So I think parents, you have to create that safe place for your child. You have to recognize that behavior change and start early on. If you start noticing signs that they're shying away, for most teenagers, when they get older, let's talk about it, they're going to shy away because they don't want to be around their parents. But there's a different kind of shy away too. So you have to pay attention to that as well. You have to pay attention to who the crowd that they're hanging around. You have to pay attention to eating. You have to pay attention to the way they dress. You got to pay attention to just everything. Conversation. Sometimes children are asking us stuff and we're not picking up on the key words that they're saying. And we're just thinking. When Jada asked me something, I'm like, why did you ask me that? You know, were you having thoughts about this at some point? Why is this bothering you? You can tell me. And I tell her, don't worry, like you're not going to get in trouble. This is just us talking. I don't want her to feel scared to come to me. So I would say the biggest thing is behavior. Behavior is the biggest thing. Pay attention to it. Pay attention to the key words. Do not assume that your child is okay or that child is okay just because they say they're okay or they appear to be okay. We all know, I call it putting on the face. We can put on faces really good and we'll be suffering in silence. So talk to your children, have that open dialogue with them, communicate and get them help right away.
Well said.
You know, I think that, and to piggyback off of what Mika just said, but I think when you see a kid's negative behavior, what they're saying is, I have a need that's unmet, right? And so we want to replace the negative behavior with positive behavior instead of meeting the need that they have, right? And so we always want to replace the negative with the positive, but instead we can't necessarily look at the positive behavior before we look at because the behavior is just, you know, a symptom of what's going on. So we have to fix the symptom in order to change the behavior. And so in order to fix the symptom, we have to find the need that the child has. So when you see a kid whose behavior changes, when you see a kid whose appearance change, you know, they might keep their room neat and then all of a sudden it becomes messy. When you see grades drop, when you see their friends change automatically. When you see those things happen, it's really, really important to identify that as something is going on and there's a need that has to be met, right? And so Tishan put something underneath that I think is really key. I hope I said your name right, Tishan. She said some parents, I'm prefacing this because I didn't scroll back, some parents don't know that their kid has a need or they can see those behaviors because they're in it themselves. And so that's why the conversation, having conversation and relationship with your children is so important. In spite of what you're experiencing or going through, having those relationships is important so that you can overcome those situations. So,
Very well said.
And I would say, I guess one other thing I would say too is that if parents start early on having conversations with their children and making it safe for them, I think sometimes, and even when and recognizing that, even when we're in our trauma and being honest, like I'm not doing well. Some people have a problem. Parents have a problem. Like for me, I tell Jada all the time, listen, I'm an adult, but I still, you know, I go through things too. I have emotion. I feel sad. She asked me, she said, TT, do you feel sad? Yep, I sure do. I often feel sad. What do? You know what? I allow myself to feel sad, but then I go to my safe place, you know, and we talk about it and she's okay. And she'll ask me, are you happy today? Talk about those emotions, you know, because it is important for us to have those conversations with our children, not just when trauma happens, but even before, because this is how we're going to start recognizing that something is not right or maybe concerning.
And I would say also piggyback on what Mr. Stark was saying about parents being aware. I think the healthier as we as parents become, the naturally the more aware we can see what's going on with our children, right? And creating a safe space for them, right? So they can say something. But just also, I think just being aware, like I think it's so easy as parents, our day to day, we got work, we got this, we got that, we're going through the motions. Are we recognizing where our kids are? You know, do we recognize the change when it happens, or do we just chalk it up to, you know, they're just teenagers now, you know, that type of thing? So yeah, I would say like just being aware, but also therefore, the more we are aware of ourselves, the more I feel like we can be aware, aware of what's going on with our children.
Yeah. Let me add this. Obviously, totally agree with everything that was said. For me, I'm big on the personal responsibility. And so when I see behavior change, when I see something that I feel needs to be addressed, of course, I'm addressing it through conversation, through awareness, through checking things out. But the first thing I'm checking is me. The first thing I'm checking is how I'm showing up, how I'm conducting myself. I'm checking the environment. I'm checking all of the things that are within my control. I'm checking myself. What's going on here, and then I'm being strategic with the conversation. Because again, we talked about safe space, and I talk about this often, where we need to have healthy relationships with our children. And that needs to be a daily thing that exists. That needs to just be the norm, so that when the ish does hit the fan, it's normal for us to have a dialogue. And so we have to stop being so busy, so grown, and too cool or too decent to engage with the young people in our lives. And we have to stop being dismissive of them, because it's painful, but people will allow certain things to go on until it reaches a point where it's taking from me. I'm letting that go on until the school calls and interrupts my workday. I'm letting that go on until there's this big blow up. I'm letting that go on and that's very selfish of us. So we have to do a better job of showing up every day for ourselves and setting the stage and creating a healthy environment. And that'll eliminate the vast majority of this, because when they're going through a thing, we can normally attach it. It's attached to us, and we'll blame the change in the friends, and we'll blame this and blame that, but it's usually us. We made some adjustments, right? They're acting different. You had them up late 4 days straight. You ain't gonna own that part. You just gonna own the part that they was, what I mean? So we have to take more personal responsibility, and we have to own our part. We have to take it to another level. We like to do this, and it's like, no. When my son start acting up, I zoom out and I take a look at me. Whoa, what's going on with me? What do I need to do? And then that layers later, it gets to them. But it starts with us. I'm the leader. I'm the responsible party.
Okay, so Coach Reese's comments are a good segue into the next question that I would like to bring up. I'm not sure the way I want to phrase the question, but what I want to say is kind of tied to what he was saying. A lot of times, children are having issues because their parents had or are having issues. And a lot of it goes back to childhood trauma. So what is the advice that you would give someone that has unaddressed trauma from their own childhood that is now, raising children, or, has an influence in the lives of other people? What would you say to them?
A lot of times when parents are parenting, they don't necessarily realize that their trauma is generational, right? That they're passing on trauma from their childhood onto their children's childhood. And so, believe it or not, they don't realize it or recognize it. As a matter of fact, definitely in our culture, we believe that those of us who were raised in the era in which we were raised was the best time to be raised, right? So what we say is that the trauma that we endured shaped us into who we are. No, the trauma that you endured because you haven't gotten help promotes the trauma that you're instilling in other people. And so, although I think, I'm biased as well. I was born in the 70s, raised through the 70s and the 80s, right? I feel like that was the best time ever because I'm biased to it. And so with that comes along with my traumas. So I feel like I got my butt beat and my kids gonna get their butt beat, right? or my grandmom got the switch, or my mama got the switch, my kids gonna get the switch. And so we cannot pass our childhood traumas on. So to answer your question, it is important for us to get parents, even when I see parents and when I see children, right, of parents, and their parents bring them in and was like, I just can't get my child to do this, 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 and this. Well, let's take a look at the parenting, right? Let's take a look at the parents' trauma. Let's look at your parents' history. Well, why you need to know about me? Because I brought my son in to see you. I wasn't coming to see you. I don't need therapy. My son does. No, the reason why your son has those behaviors is because he has a need that's not being met. And so I want to look at the need that's not being met. You're the parent, so you're the one who provides the need. So we then have to go back and look at how they were raised and how they were raised impacts how they raise their children. And when parents see that, and you see the light bulb come on, then things change, and that happens quite often. But it's important that the parent takes responsibility, right, for their part, takes responsibility for their traumas, take responsibility for their childhood, and then when raising your child, and I wanted to say this in the last question, you can't raise your child based on how you were raised, but based on the experiences that they're having. They're not going through what you went through, right? For a while when my son was younger, I was trying to teach him how to fight, right? I was trying to, you got to protect yourselves out here in these streets, right? That's how I but I grew up in the inner city, right? I grew up in the hood where you had to fight every day. And so my son was like, Dad, by the time he was 10, he was like, I ain't never been in a fight. I can't even use what you gave me. Matter of fact, we live in the number 2 safest city in the whole country, right? Why in the world am I training him for battle when he never goes to war, right? Just in case? Maybe. I don't know. But we were wasting a lot of time. I was wasting a lot of time on my childhood trauma and making sure that he was prepared for my trauma, that I wasn't even focused on him and his, right? And so I was missing a beat. Like, he's like, Dad, they called me, they jumped me in school. It was 3 white kids jumped me in school. I'm like, oh, I ain't never deal with that. So I wasn't dealing with it, So it was important that, I taught him from where he is in his life, as opposed to where I am in my life. In my traumas.
Anybody else like to add to
It's
that?
funny, like, anybody ever, you talking to your kids and all of a sudden you say that one thing and it sounds just like your parent and you go, oh, I didn't even know that was like, and you hate it when that happens to you, but nonetheless, you're saying the same thing to your kids in this moment,
Yep.
or like you said, like, well, that's what happened to me and look how I turned out. But yet there's things in me that aren't that great. I think it's so easy to do that. Like, I always tell people this. I've always asked people this, like, can you give me my phone? It's like, no, I can't give you your phone. Like, why can't you give me my phone? Because I don't have your phone. And I think it's very simple. It's like, you can only give what you have. So if you're coming from these experiences that you've had, good, bad, and ugly, like, whether you even want, and if you want to stop a certain behavior, that's a beautiful thing. But if you don't know how to stop that behavior, at some point it's coming out. At some point it's coming out. And I think as parents, like you said, when that light bulb comes on, oh, that I'm doing this because this is how I was raised. This is what I went through. And therefore I need to start to doing something. How do I change this so I can give them something else? Breaking generational cycles, whatever you want to call it. But we can only give what we have. And there's beautiful things in the way we was a parent, and there's also some things that weren't that great in how we were parented. And I think we have to decipher both of those within ourselves so we can therefore start to give them the best product possible.
My advice is learn to parent better. I don't want to parent as my parent. You may have had some great parents, and that is great. But learn to parent better. Learn to parent, and when I say better, meaning like not saying you knock your parents or anything like that. Parent better means to me, learn your children, learn your trauma, learn how your children need to be parent. The way you needed to be parent may not be the way that they need to be parent. Parent better. Parent to better your children. Parent to better yourself. You do not have to go back to that time. Another thing I hate, I'm about to get off topic with it. Almost. When people say, growing up, people used to tell us, well, go on this house, stay in this house. I cannot stand that saying because I'm like, if what's going on in this house is hurting me and mine, oh, we speaking out to somebody now. Because to me, what that says is, I don't want you. When someone say what's going on in this house, stay in this house. It's like you don't want me to uncover you. So you want me to continue to hurt while you do whatever you do, or while whatever going on in this house is going on, and I'm hurting. And a lot of time that is preventing children from really learning to express themselves. So my thing is, parent better, learn your children, um, realize when you have that trauma for yourself. People, we got some issue. When you lay down at night and you go to bed and you ask yourself, hey, did I give my best today? Yes. Did I have an emotional breakdown today? Maybe. No, I handled that, girl. I was, like we go back into the, I'm a soldier. I'm this. No, you're not. You're hurting. And so just recognize it. Recognize your own trauma. Do not force it on your children. Get help first. Do not expect for your children to change. You want everybody else around you to change, but you're not working on change. So we have to to me, just parent better. The parent that I am to Jada, I don't want to be like my mom, definitely like my, definitely. But I don't want to be like my parents. I want to be better. So that's my advice.
Good stuff.
Okay, so now we'll have an opportunity for members of the audience to participate in the conversation. If there's someone that would like to ask a question, you can do so in the chat, or if you have the ability to, we can have you come up and to the box. So does anyone have any questions related to minority mental health that they would like to pose to the panel or put in the chat? And then also, while we're waiting on that, if any of the panelists have anything that they want to add, also tell us a little bit more about how someone could access your services that you offer.
I'm full.
You're full. Oh, wow.
I can't take on no more.
That's okay. That's a good position to be in.
I mean, not like that, but I do have a lot, but I am available. I'll put it like this. I don't want to say it like this. I am available for people if you reach out to me, and I can refer or help out in a way. Yes, I'm in the Colorado area, but I just, yeah, I got a lot. So I'm not, and I don't believe in because I believe in self care for myself. So I have to know when I'm at a limit. And me and baby and talk about this. I'm at my limit. Like I don't think I can take on anything else. Like I gotta leave room for me, because I can't help anyone if I'm not mentally sane myself. So, but if you do reach out and you're in this area, I would be gladly to help you get referrals and send you over to someone, not referrals, but resources to somebody else. Or even if you're like, I'm from Georgia. So if you live in Georgia, I know a lot of resources out there. So if you do need support and need help, I definitely will be able to help you. And babe, you got to tell them about your book too. Oh, and we do have oh, you already had, okay. So we do have a children's book out it's called My Earthly Mom, My Heavenly TT Mom. I have a journal out on Amazon, so they're both available on Amazon. And I'm working on my book called Determination of a Woman: How to Find Your Purpose After You're Broken. So that book will be out by October. So I do have years coming out.
Just to let you guys know, I think most of you guys that are up here have actually written books. I know Coach Reese mentioned on the live recently that he had. So one of the panels I'm doing next month, the only one that I planned so far, is for authors. And it will give people an opportunity to ask some questions like, how did you go about writing your book? Those types of questions, because a lot of people have this idea that they want to write a book, but they have no idea where to get started. So there's going to be a panelist for authors next month. So I know you guys might get sick of me at some point, but I may be reaching out again, but it'll be about your book instead of about mental health stuff. Somebody was up a second ago. He disappeared, though. Did you want to come back up, Don Rico?
They ask questions in the box.
Micromanagement. What is it? Elaborate a little bit more, Chef. I'll s- Oh,
There he is.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Well, good evening on your side of town. Good evening, host
good
LJ.
evening. Good evening.
It was hard for me to write the question in the chat, and I'll be brief. But it has to do with some things I noticed as a client who was receiving therapy. Um, I had an amazing therapist who was helping me get past some things that were happening around a lot of the issues that most of you already know about. Um, But one of the things that she expressed was a challenge for her as a licensed therapist was the political jockeying and the micromanagement within the healthcare industry that prevented her from being able to do the quality job that she wanted to do for her clients because the institution that she worked for was more focused on the numbers, not the quality. So that was my question for the panel is you may have a heart for the people and you may want to do the best job you can as therapists, as life coaches, but have you experienced not being able to do a good job for your clients because of in-house fighting within your own institution?
That's a great question, and yeah, I have had experience with that, and I'm no longer in that situation because of that experience. Um, Oftentimes when you work for behavioral health companies, they're more in a lot of companies, unfortunately, get into the business because the financial end of it is lucrative, or can be lucrative. And so when they get therapists, they will inundate them with multiple clients, more than you can handle, right? With 6, 7, 8 to 10 clients in a day, and that's excessive. That's way too many for a therapist to have to process. And because it's too many, the quality of service that you get is far less than what you desire. And so I think, yes, I've had that experience, but it is important. That's why I do private practice now and don't necessarily deal with mental those agencies, nor do I like to deal with insurance so much because it's not necessarily about it's the politics of it all, like you said, Jeff. They don't take a lot of concern with the needs of the client. And so when you're in this it's your passion and it's your purpose. And sometimes therapists have to be reminded that you are the business owner in your own self. Even if you work for an agency, you're still the therapist. And it's important to understand and know that you can tell the behavioral health companies, no, right? I can't take on, Mika, right, 12 clients at one time, right? I can't take on, all of these clients. If you have a therapist, when you go to therapy, ask your therapist, one of the questions in vetting your therapist is important to ask is how many clients do you see in a week? Right? One. Two, what is your self-care? Three, do you have a therapist? Right? Those three questions are important because if you hear a therapist say they take on 25 to 30 clients plus, then you know that they're not necessarily giving adequate services because as much, maybe some people can, but the average therapist will see 20 max in a week. So if they take on too many, then they're not given adequate services because they're focusing on the numbers and not the quality of service.
I'm saying,
I agree. He know we just had this conversation. So I work for a behavioral health company where I do therapy, and I was about to walk away because I'm like, no way, I'm not doing that because one for me is my mental health as well. Two, if I can't provide effective services to my clients, then I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna just do it just to say, hey, I have a job doing this. That is not what I'm there for. I am passionate about my work. I am passionate about wanting to help people. So I think to all those questions that Keith told you to ask that should be asked. For me, I'm big about speaking up, and I'm big about putting out policy. I will policy you down. Don't tell me. I will pull out a policy. I will find it. It can be dug deep down in the ground. I'm gonna put it up, okay? Because that's just me. I am not, and I speak up. I advocate, and I tell people I'm going to advocate because this is not just a job for me. It is a passion, and if I can't do it effectively, I'm just a body there that's not providing effective services. I'll go. I'll leave. So I think that for that therapist, I think we have to speak up, we have to advocate, and we cannot be afraid, or even anybody in this field, even in the field that I'm, my other job. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to advocate. And like I said, if I feel like there's something I need to say or do that's having a negative impact on the clients and people I serve, I would definitely speak up and advocate. And I'm not afraid to.
Well said.
And thank you. Just a quick response to Keith. Again, coming as a client, as a former client and a current client, because I don't believe that just because my therapy session ended back in 2018, 2019, that I stopped needing a therapist. So I'm a continued client, even though I'm no longer seeing a therapist. And that therapist, who was such a blessing for me, she ended up leaving the trade because of the pressure she was suffering. And another response to something Keith said that I thought was important is to keep in mind that the client, whatever trauma the client might be going through, they may not know to ask those questions because they're so stuck in their trauma at that moment. They may not know to say, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? How much experience do you, or whatever the questions were that you just asked. They're great questions. But I know that when I was going through my trauma of learning what happened to my daughter and a few other things, I didn't have no mindset about asking about my therapist's credentials. I was so caught up in what I was going through, I didn't even think about that kind of stuff. But I thank you all so much for your responses. You can take me down so I don't take up space for someone else.
Okay.
And NHK, thank you for that, man. And I think that's why it's important for those of us who know to continue to spread the word about, like, what questions to ask your therapist, right? What are some good questions to ask your therapist? Matter of fact, I think I'm gonna do a post on that. What's a good question to ask your therapist prior to, as you're walking into therapy? Because you're right, people don't know to ask those questions, right? You don't even think, does my therapist have a therapist? No one thinks that to ask that question. That was something the first time I heard it was in school, and everybody went to school for therapy. So you're right, NHK. Like, those are questions that people don't know, but those of us who do, it's important for us to spread the word and ask and tell people to ask those questions.
And interview those agencies and those therapists, just like interview them. Like, you're pretty much hiring them to provide a service. So when you go in, ask them those questions. Don't be afraid. Not this is about your livelihood, about your well-being, your mental health well-being. And if you don't get a good feel, I have had therapists. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm quick to fire somebody. So.
May I ask a question?
Nope.
As someone who's in this, as someone that works with a lot of minority families, especially in the autism community and what we do, and hearing you guys say about the services, and I tell my parents all the time because they're parenting from a trauma-bound place, and then we don't have the resource, and then many, not only for their children, it's even hard for them who don't have the insurance. So how do you, in our community of those who need it, we don't have the access to it. Many parents cannot pay out of pocket for that, plus the services that they're already paying out of pocket for ABA. How do we as a community bridge that gap when we need it, but many are not taking clients that have Medicaid? They're not taking their service. The waiting lists are ridiculous long for early intervention, for behavior therapy. So we seeing that pipeline of prison for our children, especially in Louisiana, and the wait list is now 6,000 plus kids waiting to get the services of therapy. And then we have parents that many want the help, they need the help, but they have no place to go. So what I encourage them is like, you have to find a service, you have to pay the money, and I get that times is hard. How do we bridge that gap? Because parents want it, they need it, but they're denying the Medicaid for the children. Many are turning to private practices, as you guys are saying. So in my community, how can I encourage parents to say, I know you need the help, but I don't know where to send you, because if they can't afford it to be a better parent, many parents are now being diagnosed at an all-time high because their parents didn't know to go get them checked. Many are walking around with mental illness, schizophrenia, so many disabilities, and now they're on top of parenting. And that is a problem that I'm seeing in my community. And we also have the mindset of, I'm not going to talk to nobody. I don't want to use those resources. So how can I bridge that gap for my parents?
I think one of the things that you said, Renata, was parents saying that, they're not going to use those resources. And so when that is one of those things where services cannot be provided or given unless the people say they need them, right? I'm not going to access the services if I don't feel like I need them, right? Or if I don't feel like that there's hope in there. So I know in specific communities, especially the one I live in now, there are a lot of programs. There are a lot of conferences and events that go on that surround mental health and the need of, right? And so I think leaning on your community, one. I know where you're going to go, Renata, with this because of your fight within the school district, but I am going to jump out there and say this, and I know you'll have a comeback for this, but leaning on your schools, because schools are now becoming more and more mental health focused, right? And so leaning on your schools for those resources are very important. Now, I know I put that out there, and knowing how you get down and how you fight schools for services for people, how you fight for your people, I know that there's a response, so I'm ready for that.
See, and here's the hard truth that's going on. Those IEPs cost $45,000 per district. That's what it is in Louisiana.
Right.
We have the money for it, but they didn't move counselors, social workers out of the school system. We now have police officers as resource. We have closed down so much. When I tell you that many say turn to the school system, your children are worth money. Don't matter if they're disabled or just a regular student. They're not teaching them. Parents don't show up when we have laws and all these rules in place, and you go to school board. We don't show up to get what's needed because we believe if we move out of that area, we move from the hood, that's not our problem. But if you're paying taxes, if you're paying money into it, it is your problem. You should still speak up. But with the politics involved, and like I tell parents, you have to pay, like I tell my parents all the time, if you can afford to look for Beyonce tickets, they was just out here for Essence. So many of us was out here for Essence. Tickets was ridiculous high. We could find money for everything else, but when it's time to pay for what we need, we find a complaint. And I get that sometimes you have to pay out your pocket. But parents have to, for me in a community when you're speaking to parents, and y'all was speaking earlier about how to get parents to show up and build a relationship with their children. First, their children have to trust them. Many children don't trust their parents because when they confide in them, they go and you confide in your mom on the phone telling your auntie, your cousin, everybody, and that child don't trust you. So first, parents got to learn how to be able to bridge and connect with their children. It's a disconnect. Mothers are jealous of daughters. Fathers are, you see it, and it's like you have to build in your home, and how you parent is how you parent. But it first going to start with parents retraining their mindset, and you have to let your children know that safe place should always be home. That's why I tell parents I don't agree with the lifestyle, That's why many children turn to the LGBT community because they want to be heard. They want to feel, they're looking for validation. And then when they can't get it in their home and you continue to down them as a parent, then they'll find it for outside. And I get that many are broken, many are trauma, but like I say, how long can we use that as an excuse when our children are going to be pipelined to the prison? Now, your children can have a record here in Louisiana at the age of 10. So if we're not stepping up as parents and being involved, and I get it, I hear it, I see it, and for me, it starts with us parents because I'm going to call it out. We love to make the excuses on what we can't do, we don't know how to do, but when, like you guys have on this platform, you're giving it for free, they won't be in this room because you're not talking mess, you're not talking drama, you're not talking down on black men and black women. They want the drama but don't want what's needed, and it's kind of like medicine. We don't want to take the medicine that's going to make us feel better, and it may be nasty, but it's going to heal us. But we rather keep walking around complaining and patching it up. And somewhere we have to look back to our community, because if we have the churches are saying that our doors are open, and I get the schools are taking the money out, then our pastors that you're going to that church on Sunday, they should have a mental health. That's where we first started, because they're going to first take your children to church. They're going to pray it away if they gay. If I can't say it on here, they're going to pray it away or whip it out. We're going to run to the church and lay hands. So if we're going to run to the church, you're going to pay your tithes in the church. Then the church should invest in a mental health department, because they're getting the grants. You're getting the food grants. Why we can't invest the same money in the churches as a whole? The churches, the politicians who we hire, everyone accountable. But it takes the community to do it. And that's my answer.
I need to have you on a future panel.
Right. I agree 1,500% with you. I went out into school, like I told you, I used to be in the school services in the school, because I saw those same issues that you are seeing. People not wanting to go and get it. One thing I commend you for is being honest with those parents and calling them out on their stuff. And a lot of time professionals do not want to call parents out on their stuff, or people out on their stuff. You got to call them out on their stuff. You don't want to come get it because you want to go to Beyonce. Tell them, but bringing the resources into the school if we can, or in the community. I used to work in this area in Florida, and it was Fernandina Beach, you guys. I don't know if y'all know where that is, but they have the hood side and then they got the other side. So the parents never wanted, they didn't want to go get the services. So I said, okay, every time I turned around, they had an excuse why they could not go and get it. It was too far. It was this, it was that. And of course, some of them had some valid points. Okay. So I said, all right, I'm going to bring it to you guys. So I brought it to them. But when I bring the services to them, I had to make it so entertaining for them and put entertainment there, put food there. But how I said it, well, you weren't going to get to all of that until you walked through them resources and got them resources. You weren't even going to get to the food and the entertainment first. You're going to have to walk right on through these resources first, and then you can get to the food. But it's still the fact that that's the only way we had to get them out. I agree with you, parents and people and adults and professionals, we have to take in accountability that the reason why our children are not succeeding is because we're not going out getting the resources and we're not getting the help that we need. And then we put it back on them and say, well, they're not thriving because you're not thriving. That's why. And so I do agree with you. I think that we have to keep, you have to just keep pushing. I think going to your legislation and reaching out, standing in those capitals and demanding that politics are changed for our kids. I have did that before. I have stood in the Capitol. I don't know if y'all ever did that, but it's a certain time of year in Atlanta where you can go and you write on the ballot what your, this envelope, what your concerns are, and you go and stand in that Capitol until you speak to those senators. And so I have done that. I mean, when I say I have done everything, and we can't stop. And I think the issue is that we get so frustrated because we're not getting an answer, and people start giving up and they start saying, well, this is just going to be how it is. No, it's not. Like, we got to keep pushing. We got to keep thriving. And as far as the kids in the school, I feel like we just have to give them the resources. And there is a team app. I don't forgot the name of it. When I find it, I'm going to post it. But it is a team app that if the parents are not going to get them therapy or treatment or whatever it is that they need, they can actually log onto this app themselves and get it themselves. So there are other resources out there. We just have to know all of them. And if you can get people to come into the school and provide those resources in the school and keep educating and find those therapists who maybe just will come out for a few hours a day to say, hey, we may not be able to provide a full therapy session, but we can give some resources, we can talk, we can see, we can make some referrals, then maybe starting there and keeping the kids engaged with someone to feel safe to talk to. But I commend you. I thank you. And
Yes.
I know it's not an easy job that you're doing, but hopefully everybody will come together and help you. I pray they do anyway.
And Coach Renanda, you should definitely network with our lovely moderator, Chandelier. So connect with her, find Chandelier in the chat, and connect with her, please. Maybe you guys can share some ideas with each other. She's in a different area than you are, but she still may be able to give you some suggestions. And I appreciate you coming up, and I please follow me because I'd like to have you on one of the future panels.
I'm following everyone, but listen, and I'm gonna say this and I'll let it go, and I'm gonna drop down. I teach parents that to be the change, you gotta walk it by yourself, right? When I first started this, I done burned bridges with politicians because I don't do politics. I'm for the people. And like Miss Mika said, I'm gonna speak up. I don't care about burning a bridge because God didn't put me in that position to harm, and He gave me this calling. I organize with parents, and like you said, out my own pocket. I spent money on telling parents show up to inclusive. All they had to do is sign up and show up. They had bowling, they had alcohol. They didn't even want to get out for that. So then they tell me, well, Renata, this going on with my child. What can I do? So I told them, well, let's have a blackout when we hit the pockets. Because when we withhold our children with that money, guess who's going to come now? The federal government. Then you're going to hear parents say, who going to keep the kids? Well, let them hold a sign. Let me tell you something. Every Sunday, if y'all look on social media in New Orleans, they have something which is called Second Line. These parents dance in the street in 95-degree weather. It be hot with alcohol. You have your children out there walking and marching. Let them have a sign and march with you. We give the excuses, and I'm like, God, I'm not a minister, but I'm for those that want to do the work. And I tell them, I'm not in the mind-changing business. I'm not going to coddle you. You have to fight for your child if you're not going to harm your children. Why you let the school system, your politicians, and everyone else do? And it starts when we do not speak up, and then many sell out for the dollars, because they're always going to cross the line. They're going to start with you, then they're going to offer them the money saying, hey, you come work in our system and then do the dirty work for us. And it been many times, it been hours. So that's why I said when my pastor them told me, well, you can't say that, to the church, but what are y'all doing? Y'all ask for our tithes, you ask for our offering. You got to pay, if you're not a member of the church no more, you got to pay $2,500 to pass a non-member in the church. So when you say you want us to come into the church to get our soul saved, you want us to pay tithes, and you're giving us milk and cookie service. Then you sell us out when a politician come in your church and give you a donation when you're 501c. Don't bring it to me. See, I'm the one that's going to walk out to church. I don't play them games, y'all. I don't. So when I tell you, and I'm young doing this. Hey, CJ. I'm young doing this. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm out here in the game. I'm young doing this. And I'm like, I told Mama, I said, Mama, I didn't ask for this calling. And I said, God, I didn't ask for this calling. But I tell you one thing. If you gave it to me, I'm going to tell the parents the truth, and many in my field. And I tell them, the money going to come. It's going to come. But I have to save our people, and especially how they have these young boys that thinking that they have autism. Y'all see the case in Florida right now. If you don't know, a 17-year-old assaulted his teacher, and he looking at 30 years. So they thinking autism will protect you. It's not. Like the family that called in California, child had autism. They call a police officer. Why would you call a police officer? You called them 5 times, but as people, we didn't want to use in-service. If you're on a waiting list, get those in-service. You're going to get the social worker, the counseling, the therapy. Then you're going to get parent training. But we feel, oh, I don't want my child to go in there. I could do it myself. Baby, you cannot do it. You is broken. You need somebody to speak into you and get your traumas together. Because now you continue in that cycle, but the parents going to ask me in my community, Renata, listen, yeah, my child got this diagnosis, how I get the Social Security check. That's all you want? What about the school? Because see, once they learn how to figure out that, now the child support game ain't the way no more. Now is getting your children with a disability, a diagnosis of ADHD, ODD. How you know your child have ODD? Who told them they have ODD? You need to be hard on that boy. You walking around with labels at the school giving, and you ain't going to the doctor to get an assessment, but you're going to run to the Social Security office. Y'all, don't get me started. Don't I be trying.
But you know what? You are so right. And I had situations like that when I worked at this Head Start. And this girl, she said, this lady, she was like, she had like 6 kids, and we had ran a diagnosis for the kid. And the child came back clean, like nothing wrong. She was like, no, y'all lying. You know what the problem was? Her older children were getting older. This was a younger child, like 3, and she knew her Social Securities were about to. She didn't work. All the money she got was from Social Security because every last one of her children had a diagnosis. But this child, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this child. But she was so upset that we did not diagnose that child. And it's sad. It's sad.
And unfortunately, you're more, as our children, you are more valuable with a diagnosis to the district. And so that's what matters most. Hey, I don't know if y'all, she didn't say this, but, Coach Renata, can you tell them about the your live that you do, and typically in the mornings, and what days? I don't know what day specific, but I know you're always on there dropping gems for parents with students with IEPs and autism.
Okay, I do a live where I provide free resource to parents. We talk every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I teach parents how to parent, how to connect with them, how to provide and redirect. We roll 8 a.m. to 11. They ask the questions for free. I provide them on a resource. They can reach me by clicking my link in my bio to schedule with me. I have a free autism community. I have now I'm going to be doing parent training videos because they say they don't know how to do it. So now I'm preparing with me and my son. Our journey has been, I took my son from nonverbal to verbal in Louisiana with no resource. And I did the parent side. I literally taught him everything I knew as a parent. My son is now reading on his grade level on an honor roll. I won 5 state complaints, 2 OCR case. I want a district to pay me to move, and they had to pay my rent and for a whole year. And while moving there, I also want another out of district transfer as a parent. So I empower parents how to do it. I don't do it for them. I tell them that they can do it. And I tell them not to be finesse on this app, but you have to show up and be consistent. And I tell them I'm a realistic empowerment coach. I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm going to tell you the truth. And if you cannot handle that, I'm sorry, but that's how I have to be.
Love it.
Coach Renata, you are doing some amazing work. I like, that's amazing. And you said something else, like you're doing this, you're doing this young, you're doing it alone. And this is just what I know about life. Like a lot of times, especially when God gives us something, he don't give it to nobody else. So don't nobody else understand it the way we do. And then it's so hard trying to get people to understand it too. And what I'm realizing more and more, like we're talking about what parents are willing to do and what parents aren't willing to do. It's just like the easy thing. If I got some stuff going on and I don't even know how to address it, deal with it, or believe that it's even something I can fix, I'm going to medicate myself doing something. Or a bunch of different things, you know what I mean? And it's like something I always got to come up to, like the work we're doing is hard. Even if you're just someone going to therapy, that is not easy. That is some hard work. And then to be in the field, working with people, trying to get people to buy in. This is hard. This is not easy. It drains all of us. I just heard some of you all say you had therapists already quit, leave the industry because of how the politics and all of it. And it's just like, I think I hope that we are giving ourselves the grace that we need, because I heard Mr. Starr say, like, there's a passion about this. Hermika say that you're passionate about this. This ain't just about no money, right? But when you see that change, and it's just like, for me, I hate it because the process is the process. The process is slow and methodical, and sometimes you don't see no fruit. What is it? A bamboo tree? It grows underground for 5 years, then finally shoots up. And I would say this too, what I think is going to happen based on what is happening, the 1% of black male therapists, all because it's happening right now. What I think we're going to see in the future is that increase more and more. So therefore, we're going to see more and more people get the help, get healed. But as of right now, it's just it feels like it's just an uphill battle, which it is. And it's just like I want to commend you for your work, what you're saying. And I'm also gonna be I'm be on that live too. I'm gonna check it out because and I wish I had a better. Oh, we need to do this. We need to do that. I think what we're doing is what needs to be done. But the more and more we do it, the more and more people that start to. If you get just another person to believe, start doing something, we're moving in the right direction. But sometimes, for me, it just seems like it's too slow.
I just was talking about that's confirmation that you say that. I was just saying it to someone. I'm like, God, you put me in this position. Now I gotta go out here and do it, which I didn't want to do. I just wanted to just let me and my child just do what we do and pass through. And then I couldn't be quiet, like Miss Mika. I gotta say something. I can't shut up. It don't feel right. I'm gonna say something. And then I'm seeing it on an app, and I'm like, my child don't do none of this. They can learn. All children have behavior. But there's like, well, my child don't have understanding, and I tell parents all the time, if your child doesn't have understanding, but they have a Nintendo Switch and we purchase it, and then they could get to those levels on the board, but when it's time to teach them a consequence, we deem as you can't do that, and we have to step up. And for me, it's just continue to show up, and I would love for y'all to speak life into my parents and share with them, because I've been looking for this type of community. So if y'all ever available and would love to come speak to my parents, y'all are welcome on my show.
Girl, yes.
I mean,
No,
Yes.
Mika.
What?
Didn't Mika just tell us she got 85,000 things on her book? She just,
And I would make 90,000 more just to do that because it's needed.
and it's worth it.
And it's worth it. So yes, and I am big on that. And parents need to hear. They need to hear from people that look like them, because a lot of times they don't hear from people that look like them. And I think that that's what they need to hear it from. And it needs to be honest and truthful conversation with them, but also resourceful. And they can't say, I always say, people, I'm gonna give you this resource. You can't say you don't know. You only don't know so many times when you don't have it. But once you have the resources, it's not I don't know anymore. It's I just didn't do.
Yeah.
So
And we have one person that posted a comment. She actually came up, but then she went back down again. And it wasn't very specific, so you can attempt to answer it if you would. But if you're not able to, I understand as well. She's looking for advice for narcissistic trauma bonders.
they
First, I do want to say this, right? We are very we gravitate to buzzwords, right? And so it's important to realize that sometimes when we call someone a narcissist, they're not diagnosed. It's just based off of what we think we've learned from social media or from our own research. However, it is important to understand, is it true narcissism when you give that person a label? I'm not saying it's not, I'm just putting it out there. The word is very much overused.
around.
And if you really understood it and how it's diagnosed, then most of the people that we diagnose with narcissism it's not, with being a narcissist isn't narcissism, right? So how do you deal with it? Do you mean from a standpoint of being the narcissist, or from the standpoint of being involved with a narcissist?
The question wasn't really posed as a complete question, so you can take whichever route you want to based upon that, because it doesn't have it's not a full question. It's just like a comment basically. So you can take it the direction that you want to take it in.
Yeah, it says involvement. It depends on the specifics, and with a narcissist, what you have to understand is, of course, their behaviors are they blame, they insult, they attack, and they take no responsibility, right? But knowing that that is a response to their trauma. And most narcissists, because that's the way they respond and they blame and they pass responsibility, chances are they won't take responsibility for therapy or their own healing or get coming from that situation. So that being the case, when you are involved with someone like that, you have to really evaluate your relationship. You don't have to be involved with that person, and it's important to get therapy so that you can understand, how do I exit from the tight hold and bond of a narcissist. So you deal with that um, by taking the steps to talk to someone, because it's easy when a narcissist has control over you. He makes you feel, or she makes you feel, as if there's nothing you can do to get out. The only thing that you can do is make yourself better so that they can be happy, right? And so that is not them in a sense as much as it's you, right? It's something that you have to work through. Narcissists can only attack and prey on those who are in a vulnerable, weak state, right? And so it's important for you to build yourself up, so that you can get the power and the strength to walk away.
I agree, and I agree. Everybody is using the term being a narcissistic person, or he's a narcissistic person, or she's narcissistic, very loosely now. That is a diagnosis, first of all. Second of all, I think that, like Keith said, you have to, if you are seeing some of those traits, the person, that behavior, unless that person is willing to work on themselves and change, you have to be the one to make the change, and you have to be the one to loosen that tie with that person and walk away. I don't care if it's your mama, cousin, uncle, brother, sister, or daddy. Like, you have to sometimes just say, okay, or learn to, this is who they are. This is who they are. And learn to just deal with who they are, knowing that you're not going to get nothing less and nothing more. But first of all, it's a diagnosis first. Sometimes people just people. But but if that is the case and you are dealing with someone who has that diagnosis, you have to, one, either learn to deal with that person and that diagnosis, or two, you just have to loose your ties from them altogether. And sometimes it can be hard to walk away, because we pick up the positive things that are in them, and we want to keep those things and keep that relationship with them. But if that person and that behavior is hurting you, then you have to release those ties from them. So that would be my answer.
Which is very different. That's a different. My perspective wasn't, and what Mika's saying is not based on a mother or a parent to a child, like underage, where they have no way of escaping, right?
No,
That's a little different. But when it comes to being in a relationship with someone as an adult, then those things work. And
if it's a child, yes, totally different. Don't dump your children. Let me clarify that. I'm not telling you to dump your children. That's not what I'm saying. Work with your children and understand, like, if you start early on, maybe they can learn some better coping skills. Maybe they can learn how to cope better with their diagnosis, and you have to be willing to cope better with them as well. But if this is a relationship wise, then you are choosing to stay there with your children. It's about getting help and recognizing those signs early on and going and get the help that they need, so that you both can learn how to live and reside together or have a relationship together. So yes, totally two different things. Don't leave your children. That's not what I'm saying.
Did you want to add anything to that mindset?
I'm not a therapist by any means, but what I heard from both of them is something you got to work on yourself. You got to do the healing. You got to get strong enough to be able to get yourself out of a situation or be able to handle and navigate that person. And at the bottom line is, like, we can't control nobody else in this world. And as much as I wish I could at times, right? All I can control is me. Getting the help that I need so I can go be who I need to be is the most important thing. And so I would say that to anybody.
Okay, I'm going to end with one last topic. And if kind of a touchy subject, but some of the subjects we talk about have been as well. But these are topics that are necessary. So, what advice would you give to someone who's either in a DV situation or knows someone that's involved in a current DV situation?
There you go, Mika.
Wow. So yes, this is a. I'm. First, I would say number one, domestic violence is not only emotionally hard and draining, but it's a safety factor. So there's not an answer to this question. I would say it is an answer, a solution, but it's not a quick one. Let me put it that way. First of all, we have to know the situation. Sometimes we want people to leave that domestic violence relationship or situation, and it's just not safe. Sometimes staying is safer, and I say this until they can exit safely. So you can't just go to somebody like, "Girl, you need to leave." Or you need to leave her. Sometimes it's just harder for that person to leave. And when I say that, it's because number one, most victims are they're staying for children, financial reasons. They've been threatened. They may have almost lost their lives before. So you're wanting someone to exit this relationship or exit that situation. I feel like this comes down to showing empathy, just being supportive. They're not going to just up and leave because you said it. It can push them away because they're become more protective towards their abuser than to the friendship. So sometimes you just have to be a listening ear, refer them to someone. If someone do come to you and ask about being in a relationship,